All right, welcome back. So this is a little video to show you a C64 OS first run configuration utility that I'm working on. It's actually part of the prebooter, which is used to set the current device, the partition, and the system directory, and then to call the real booter. So what's kind of neat about this is that it's written in BASIC, but then it self-modifies in order to save the configuration data. So we will load her up like this. Okay, so on first run, we get this little simple screen here asking us for our device number. So let's put in some fake data first. We'll say 9, partition 45. System directory, let's call it C64 OS system. Okay. So now it asks us to review whether this is correct or not, but I will say no. So now we can put it in again. So I'll put in the real data here, 8.1 OS. Okay, and I'll say, is that correct? So we'll say, yes, that's correct. So it just self-modded, saved itself, so the next time we run C64 OS, it will not by default go into this configuration utility, but it will actually boot up. However, as we can see here, if you want to re-enter the config utility, all you have to do is press any key immediately after running the booter. So we will press a key, and that will boot us up into C64 OS. So that part worked. Just let this boot up. Okay, there we are. So now we will quit out of here. Now, if I run that again and I push no keys, there we go. So it worked. It used the self-modified config data that we put in the first time, and this time it just booted us right up. Okay, so now we'll quit again. Now this time what we'll do is we will run this prebooter, but we'll push space immediately upon loading it. Okay, so we're taken into the config utility. It lets us review the configuration that it currently has, and if that's not correct, we can change it. So we'll change it to, well, I'll just set it back to what it's supposed to be. Okay, and then we'll say, is that correct? We'll say yes. So it resaves that config. Okay, so rather than booting up, because you know that's going to work, let's just quit out of here and let's do a list. So what we see here is that the first line is a remark, and the data that is in here gets parsed. It's the actual config data, so it gets parsed out of the basic program by the beginning part of the program. And if you want to modify it, it will take the information that you want, and then it will actually poke it back into this part, this line, and then it will save the whole program. So the advantage of doing this is that the program is self-contained, so it doesn't need to know where to find any other file. So imagine that you ran the booter, but it had to load in an external config file to get that data. Well, it would have to load that config data from the same device and the same partition and the same directory that it itself is in. But just based on the way the C64's file handling works, the program actually doesn't know that. So the advantage here is that we can switch to, let's say we're on device 8, and we'll say the default partition, the default directory in this partition will be, say, tests. Okay. Then we'll set the default partition to be something other than 1. Okay, so now we're in demos. Now we'll set the default device to be 10. Okay, so everything is not the defaults. And yet, we can still issue a command like this. So here we say, okay, well, how do we find the booter? It's in the first partition in the root of device 8. And when we run it, it magically changes all the defaults of the device to actually be the correct location to boot up, and it works. There you go. Pretty cool. Thanks for watching.